evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please.
Mrs. Urbane. Mr. Thorne.
Present.
Mrs. Tierney.
Here.
Mr. Stahl.
Here.
Dr. Krebs. Here. Mrs. Marks.
Here.
Mr. Meyer.
Here. All right, that moves us to the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Support.
Stahl, support by Ms. Tierney, as it was. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That brings us to the call to the public. If there is anyone here this evening that would like to address the board, this is your opportunity to do so. The protocol is to fill out a card, put it in the box to the left of Dr. Mosier. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Dr. Krebs will be keeping track of the time. We have one card. Sid Adkin, the floor is all yours. And if there's anyone else here that would like to address the board, this will be your last opportunity to fill out a card. Thank you.
All right. Well, Sid Atkin, parent of 2 Brighton school students, or at least one that graduated, one that's still in. And don't worry, I'm also sick of hearing myself speak. But first I want to say thank you for the time and care you've taken given this bond process. Bringing in architects to evaluate the proposed improvements was an important step, and we understand that those plans are still in process, and we are encouraged by your thoughtful approach. I'm here tonight not just as a parent, but as a part of a growing community of families who deeply care about the future of performing arts in Brighton. This year, the parents of choir, band, and orchestra came together for the first time. Behind us is a broad and energized group of students, parents, and teachers who are ready to support this bond. We believe in what these programs provide, not just artistically, but personally, socially, and academically. Our ask remains the same: meaningful investment in facilities, staffing, and flexibility that will allow these programs to continue growing and serving students at all levels. We know that BCPA is a treasured part of our district, but also it has real needs. The seating, orchestra pit, fly system, and the sports spaces all need updates that will make a major difference. And with the BCPA booked solid before the school year even starts, we need more flexible performance spaces, like the Black Box Theater, that opens the door to more than just theater. The type of space would allow for small concerts, ensemble performances, student recitals, as well as elementary and middle school events that currently take up space in gyms and lunchrooms. It would create opportunity for band, orchestra, and choir students to perform more frequently in a setting that honors their work and welcomes families into the experience. We have growing programs, we have momentum, and we have community support. What we need now is vision and commitment to match that energy with the right plan. We're here as partners. We will work with you. We'll help promote this bond. And most of all, we're asking that you keep the performance arts a visible, valued, and supported part of Brighton's future. Thank you for your time and for the work ahead.
Thank you. Okay, with no other cards, that will close the call to the public and move us to the for-action portion of our agenda. Item A, regular meeting minutes of June 9, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Urbane, support by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item B, the Human Resources Report. Mr. Anastasov.
All right, good evening. So we got a retirement resignation on there, and through those, we are bringing 3 new hires recommended to you today. 2 were on the previous report as of Thursday, and then 1 was just added today.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Krebs, supported by Ms. Urbane. Any discussion?
I just have a question, and I was asking this question. How does this position us for the year? Do we have any open positions, or what are we looking at? Are you expecting any more?
Yep, so as far as our teachers, the only vacancy we have right now is Scranton ELA, which is following up with their second or third step of the interview process for the kids actually on Wednesday, I believe. And so we'll have that wrapped up soon and be able to bring you hopefully a candidate at the next board meeting. And then that's it right now for the BEA. We are watching some other numbers, just make sure we don't have to add at the elementary. We do have a bridge teacher still, and then we're working on some of our support staff still, but we're in good shape across the board in the district. Yeah.
Anything further? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. And I would just like to, on behalf of the district, thank those that retired or resigned for their service to the district and wish them the best of luck in all future endeavors, and welcome all of the transition to new hires. We look forward to all the great things that you will provide to our students. All right, moving on to item C, MHSAA resolution. This is the resolution that we are asked to approve annually to be a member of the MHSAA. This was presented in the, for future action at the last meeting. So do we have a motion to approve the MHSAA resolution as presented? So, motion by Mr. Storm, support by Mr. Saul. Any discussion? Ms. Urbane?
Quick question, it's not exactly in relation to this, but I've been hearing a lot about different, this might be a John Thompson question, but about conferences and whether with all the movement that's happening in KLAA, are we moving conferences or are we up for review? What's our commitment to KLAA?
Mr. Thompson, did you want to respond, or do you want me to? It's in flux. I know that there's some teams that moved out.
I'm serious. Milford, South Lyon, like, what happened?
No, those, the old KVC days were good days, no doubt.
For the parents, the students?
Yeah, no. You know, leagues ebb and flow, typically between every 8 to 12 years. I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the beast. So, you know, when the KVC joined and came together and we formed the KLA, that was a 24-member school. With those 24 members, there were a couple subtractions here and there. There was a large subtraction when the South Lyons and the Huron Valley schools and the Waterford schools left, and they formed their own league. Subsequently, we were notified this past school year that the Livonia schools would be joining that group. And so that took three schools out of the east. So the west is still intact. Your Northville, your Novice, Livingston County schools, and your Plymouth Canton schools. So, but it leaves us with an odd number. So from that standpoint, we've been pursuing other schools. We had 2 applications, Monroe and Dearborn Crestwood. Doesn't quite replace the 3 and give us, you know, an even number. And in our business, 8s are great numbers, you know, from a scheduling standpoint. So we've been pursuing some other things and some dialogue with the OAA, the Oakland Activities Association, and the SEC. As we've shared with our principals, I think that was last week, you know, really probably, you know, the most dialogue and probably the path that's most present right now is the ongoing discussions with the SEC. We have, you know, some dates in place where communications with their principals and administration to be able to see if this is something that we can bring together. So it's kind of work in progress. Nothing's changing for the coming school year. Everybody's sitting tight. But obviously we build out well in advance. So we've got kind of a firm deadline of October 1st to, you know, where we need to fish or cut bait, so to speak. And, you know, that puts a little behind the 8 ball, but it's doable. And that was because, you know, we certainly want to do everything we can to not only look out for our own interests, but look out for the interests of our member schools in the league as a whole. So in short, that's kind of where it's at. You know, I think the talks with the SEC have been positive, moving in a good direction. They've got to, at a certain point, have a vote of their members to see if this is a good fit to bring the two leagues together. But, it's, right now, the discussions have been positive, and, worst case scenario, I don't know that we'll put the band back together for the old KVC because of where, the Huron Valley schools and the South Lyon schools are at. But, I think from the standpoint of, the position that we're in, the West is still the West. Obviously, anytime there are rumblings or actual changes in leagues, it causes, a lot of discussion and a lot of ebb and flow, and people knock on people's doors and, hey, why don't you think about coming over to our league and those type of things. But right now, everybody's, pretty focused on putting all of our work and diligence into seeing, if the SEC and the KLA coming together as one would be something, that would be beneficial to all. So that's kind of where we're at.
What is the SEC?
The Southeast Conference, so you've got, and it's a wide-ranging group, and it's not the down south SEC. No, we're not playing Alabama this fall, but no. So you've got the 3 Ann Arbors, Ypsi Lincoln, Ypsi. You've got, actually Monroe is an SEC member, even though they've applied to come to the KLAA. Tecumseh, I'm sure I'm leaving some people out. Saline's in that grouping, yeah. So they've got a group of, they have a group of, very small schools as part of their league. They basically have 3 divisions. They've got 2 big divisions, and then they have a group of smaller schools. So if that merger transpires, you probably wouldn't see the crossovers like we presently do as much, because for a Brighton or a Northville to cross over with an Ypsi, it just wouldn't be productive for either school, in some of those settings and those type of things. But geographically fits the footprint pretty well. Some of the overtures from the Oakland Activities Association, good league, good schools. We do a lot of business with the OAA. The challenge is with the OAA for Brighton and for the 3 Livingston County schools in particular, we've got probably the least. But the travel distance on a regular basis for the Livingston County schools going to the OAA, it's a push. It just is. I mean, to do a Friday night football game, not a big deal, right? But, day in, day out, having to, go down that way, it would be a heavy lift for us. So that's kind of what has driven us towards, the SEC a little bit more. Yeah, they wouldn't be in our division, though. So we really wouldn't see them unless you're talking, maybe some of those sports where not everybody's fielding a team, like gymnastics, field hockey that's coming into our department this year. Not every school in either league fields a field hockey team, so you might have some opportunities to, where you could do some things differently in some of those type of sports. But for your more standard, long-standing programs like football and basketball and baseball and softball and those things, we wouldn't, cross over with a Monroe or a Tecumseh or an Ypsi. Just the size of the school, the size differential between the schools is just, really large, and it wouldn't be competitive.
John, we see Traverse City come out here sometimes, but are they considered in our league, or are we just onesie-twosies with them, or?
No, they just, they travel.
I say we make them part of our league, because we could go and spend the night, and it'd be great.
Yeah, no, it'd be a nice trip depending on the time of the year, but no, they travel a lot. Their challenge up north is, they're large schools, and there's not a lot of large schools up north. And so for them to get contests, they come down south on a fairly regular basis, as crazy as that sounds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the approval of the MHSAA resolution signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to item D, the pavilion donation. Mr. Bain, you want to introduce that for us?
Yep, we briefly talked about this last time. The Brighton Youth Baseball and Softball Program is winding down. They want to dispose of the remaining funds. They thought that a pavilion at Hawkins would do the community the best service, so they would like to donate $60,000 toward that endeavor. That would allow about an 18-person pavilion. In a conversation with Hawkins PTO, Hawkins has long wanted a pavilion that they could fit a classroom in. They said they had $10,000 to donate toward it. When we got prices, the lowest price, which happens to be Mid-States, which we do a lot of work with already, was $82,000. So the options here are accepting the donation with the 18-person pavilion, which will be completely paid for, accepting the donation with the idea that Brighton would kick in the remaining about $12,000 for the 30-person pavilion, or denying it altogether. So, I mean, that's obviously an option, but those are the kind of the three things. We talked last time that it seemed to make sense that putting in a 30-person pavilion that a full classroom could sit under seemed to make a lot of sense. Leaving it to Mr. Jacobs to determine the actual location, but our suggestion is kind of behind that gym at Hawkins where you can see both the new playground and the old playground from it.
Okay, do we have a motion? So would move to approve the 30, with the $12,000 contribution from the district, okay? So we have a motion for Mr. Storm, support by Ms. Marks, to approve the 24 by 28 pavilion with the 30 students. That would include a $12,000 contribution from the district. Any discussion?
Question, does this include tables in it?
That will be an additional cost.
Okay, so we'd have to add that in there. Do we know about how much that would be?
It will depend on what's chosen there, but I do not know right offhand.
So for the actual pavilion, it's going to be
Concrete
Concrete
slab with steel construction. We did look at wood construction too, but ironically, wood was more expensive than steel and harder to maintain. So it'll be very similar if you've seen the pavilion at the high school that's over by the softball field. It'll be very similar to that, but larger.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays?
I'm abstaining.
So we have approval 601. And I would just like to say thank you to the BYBSP for this contribution. I think it will be a very lasting legacy for lots of use and benefit for years to come. Also, thanks to the Hawkins PTO for their contribution to this as well. And thank you, Mr. Bain, for your work in shepherding this, bringing this forward on behalf of that organization for the district's consideration.
And then just want to note that the policy committee should also update our facilities rental policy to include, when this is done, to include this, because I do think it will actually be a hot spot for some rentals.
Okay. All right, that moves us to item E, reading resolution. This is the resolution, Mr. Bain is bringing forward this resolution. It was discussed at the prior meeting as part of the conversation regarding the budget approval, and now it is before the board as a proposed resolution, as a standalone resolution. So do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Stahl, support by Ms. Tierney. Any discussion?
Just want to thank you for bringing this back to us under a different circumstance. I supported the idea then, it just was the circumstances I had a problem with, and thank you very much for doing that.
So I have a couple of questions and concerns. I'm still questioning the, whether or not we want to really support this. This, to me, seems to be taking away from the teachers' decision-making, recognizing how students are learning. that's the one part of it. The other part of it is Dr. Mosier said we're not using Lucy Calkins. That's not our program. So to say that we're not going to be buying these materials, we're already not buying these materials, so I'm not really clear on that. And in terms of how can we support students learning, one of the things about students learning reading is we need to have as many tools available for our teachers as possible. And if this is a tool that they have, that this could support a student, I'm not sure I'd want to take away that tool from a teacher. I want to do what's best for students and whatever it takes to support students learning to read. Those are my concerns about that. The other question I have, and I'm wondering if we could, where it says grounded in the science of reading. The science of reading is something that has a specific meaning, and I feel like we haven't discussed that. So I'm wondering if we could, instead of having science of reading in the motion, if we could change it to science of reading lowercase. So it wasn't in particular the science of reading as it's stated, but just in general, the science that involves reading. So I'm wondering if we could change that to science of reading lowercase.
So a couple things. One, it doesn't actually, the resolution doesn't actually say that you can't use the materials. It says we're not going to spend any more money on it. And one, if we weren't using it and spending money on it, then what does the resolution hurt? But we have seen time and time again that it keeps popping up and we are using it. And the biggest thing we're using it is teacher release time. There was an email sent to all the Hilton teachers saying that they had to use this particular test last year, and they all had to get subs to do so. So we spent district money, and when I asked just the release time, it was 73 days of release time last year. Now, that wasn't all on K through 4, but there was 73 days of release time that we as a district spent money on. And if we're not using the curriculum, it is literally a waste of our taxpayer dollars to require them to use this test.
If I may, I'm not changing my mind, but I think that needs to be said. I have a teacher who is a language arts major who works in Oakland County District, and she's my wife. And when I mentioned this, her first response was, who's using that anymore? And the one thing she did say is there are times when there are parts of that we're not calling it science, but that type of teaching, we're in their back pocket. They might go, hey, this might work with this kid because nothing that we're trying new is working with them. And they do have success that way. So again, I think the ideas are already in their heads. They've been through the training before. I understand you just don't want to spend money on it. You don't have to spend money on it for them to still have those tools in their pockets if they need it. Again, my wife has used it probably a dozen times, she said, in 37 years. So it's not formidable, but it is there. Nobody seems to dislike it as a teacher. It's just another tool in their pouch to grab from. So I draw from that because this is what Carol has done her entire life, and she goes and gets trained in this stuff and brings it back to her district. So I know she's a professional, and I also know that she's an expert at this. So I don't see a need to put money into it when they can readily availably get it. I mean, you can find anything online, but most of them have been trained in it that would even think to use this program. And they usually use it when they have a kid that's not responding to something else. Because everyone's an individual learner, everyone learns differently, and every once in a while, they'll try it, see if it helps, and it does. It helps some kids. So as long as I know that you can't take the idea away and you can't get rid of the ideals that teachers have been taught other lives, I'm fine with it because I don't see a reason to spend money on it. They're just going to use it if they need it based on what they've already learned. And we'll be moving on to greater things anyway. So just an opinion, and I thought I'd bring somebody who actually deals in it into this. Not to mention our own Miss Liz over here, who probably knows everything there is to know about it as well. So I don't have an issue with the money spent on it because I think the theory is there, and if people are going to use it for the good of kids, I don't have a problem with that.
Any further discussion?
So can we change the science of reading to lowercase, or do you,
It was Mr. Stahl's
Stahl.
motion.
would you be okay to put
Yes,
science of reading in lowercase?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine with me.
Do you need me to restate that or just agree to it? I would agree with that. It's the science.
Who, and was it, who, I can't remember, oh, Mr. You support the change there? Okay. I conceptually support this. The only concern I had, I just want to confirm this, is that, and it does kind of tie in with the concept of what science of reading encompasses, and my only concern was, I know we're piloting currently, and to the extent that although it's, whatever the science of reading encompasses, I wouldn't want to have this be adopted and then somehow that create an issue with regard to what we're piloting for the upcoming year. I've been assured that's not the case, that if we adopt this resolution, that would not have any impact on what we're currently piloting. So I just want to make sure that's the case, and as I understand it, that is the case, and so.
And if we did something outside of the science of reading, it wouldn't be legal under the current, after the next school year when the dyslexia laws go into effect. Every school has to adopt a science of reading curriculum.
I just was more concerned about this year and what we're piloting. And frankly, I think that's, while this, will hopefully move the needle further towards the ELA that we're, the success with our ELA program, I think the bigger lift is going to be making sure that we ultimately approve the right ELA curricula next year, and looking forward to the feedback from the current program that's being piloted. So, all right. So any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? That
Nay.
that passes 6-1. All right, that concludes the for action portion of our agenda and moves us to for future action. Item A is the bond application. Do you want to start, launch with that, Dr. Outlaw?
Sure. This time slot is earmarked for the board to have a chance to talk to one another. Over the next month, the board is being asked to narrow its list to talk to one another about which projects, which we've been discussing for an extensive amount of time, which projects are ultimately going to be on a list that you potentially go out for a bond. So tonight, the board has a list. It's a list that I could put up on the screen this evening. And this was going to be an opportunity for the board to perhaps make some decisions. I know we're waiting for precise estimates on many of these projects. We're waiting for design on some of these projects. But are there projects on this list that the board is ready to move forward at this time? So this is a time slot that's been earmarked for the board to talk to one another. And I'm going to turn it over to the board.
So I guess before, let's just recap kind of the timeline. As I understand it, the project, the architect and the construction management firm, King, Scott & Clark, are still in the process of doing their due diligence and analyzing and putting together more concrete cost estimates for all of these items. It's my understanding that they're hoping to have a determination of their cost estimates roughly the last week of July. Is that?
That is accurate.
Okay. And that information, once it's received, will be forwarded to the board. We are planning to have a special board meeting on August 4th, at which time we will be expected to essentially make a decision at that point whether we are going to, or we are ready to go forward with the bond for the November election. And if so, what is going to be the entirety of the scope of that list of items that are going to be included on that bond application based on all of the feedback that we will have received at that point from King, Scott & Clark. Obviously, we, in the preliminary investigation and discussion about the prospect of a bond and potential projects, we've had a lot of conversations about different projects. We have had preliminary cost estimates that we were able to secure, going back several months, which are included, in this list, and that we've had for several months, some of which may be tweaked based on the further follow-up from King Scott and Clark, and obviously others where there is no current estimate, they're going to be providing that more definitive breakdown and estimate of those projects. Within this list, there are also some different scenarios and alternatives that are still being investigated by King Scott and Clark. And so part of, I think, the ultimate determination or consideration of some of these items are going to be a function of how it's looked at from a planning, design, construction standpoint, from the consultants as to what their recommendation would be and what the corresponding cost would be, given those alternatives. So those are certainly premature now to talk about, because we're going to need their feedback on those alternatives and those specific cost estimates. Nonetheless, in the interest of time management and planning and moving forward, and to perhaps reduce the scope of what we will need to talk about and debate on the August 4th meeting, one of the things that we talked about, or we considered it at the executive committee meeting, was having this topic be a topic of conversation tonight, insofar as if there are items that are on this list that, and particularly ones that we've talked about for a long time, that we know, either unanimously or, but certainly a significant majority are going to support those items being placed on the bond application, it would be good to be able to provide the administration that feedback so that, obviously, it's still subject to a final determination that we are, in fact, going to go forward with a bond, but making that at least initial assumption, we'd be able to then let King Scott and Clark move forward with getting that information in greater detail now, as opposed to backloading that, and then we can focus on some of the, I'm going to say, not necessarily necessary items, or things that we consider as a group necessary, or things that we are that need to be further vetted and analyzed by the consultants. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do, if we can do so, is to take a look at the list. This was a list that has been circulated in the past. It's based on the information that we've talked about. It includes an assessment of sort of a preliminary ranking, and within ranking by board members, and within that report, and that Dr. Outlaw is pulling it up on the screen now. Within that spreadsheet, it's been broken down into various categories. The green indicating those items that were considered to be either a necessity or at the top of the wish list by the board members based on feedback with corresponding cost estimates. And then below that is the beginning of what's more of what was categorized as a top of wish list, and the various categories that were included in those items, and then continuing all the way down where there was support, but perhaps less important. So it's basically a hierarchy of necessity, if you will. And so if there's a list of topics that we as a group consider to be a necessity that we are going to absolutely want to include on the bond application, if we in fact confirm that we are going forward with the bond application in August, that those would be the items on the list. So I'll just start off and say that I would absolutely support all of the items in the green being considered a necessity that I would want to have on the bond application. My rough estimate was, I think it was somewhere in about $13 million, yeah, with those items. So let's just start there. Do we have a consensus that those are absolutely going to be items that we would support being on the bond application?
I agree, but I have a question. I was thinking tonight that we were working from the more detailed list from the architect's general, like walkthroughs. And so my question is, as we get to some of these more general items, like just take the next chunk, the blue chunk coming in, Spencer Food Prep, Horning, these are really dependent on, do we do a cafeteria addition? Do we do, there's a lot of things that are playing into that. So I guess, how can we overlay that list that came through with the walkthrough where they were line iteming their recommendations even without prices compared to this? Because there is overlap for sure, but there's also a lot more detail, in my opinion, in some of the things that came through on that versus this is a general, while we may support it, it could really wildly vary what that looks like in the end from a dollar standpoint.
I would recommend focusing on projects that are not as detailed as what you're talking about.
Okay.
Give you an example. The perfect one would be the food prep. I would probably wait until the architects come back and give us some recommendations around that. But HVAC, we have talked extensively about HVAC. We know the needs. We've had all kinds of conversations over the last three or 4 years about HVAC. HVAC might be one that you feel comfortable with putting on the list here today. But for example, we heard tonight about the music program. I think we should hear from the architects and construction people about what the needs are, what they observed before you make any decisions. So I'd recommend only looking at things here that, if you're going for a bond, are going to be on the list. The things that you maybe don't need as much detail and discussion, just to shorten your list. That'd be my recommendation. I think that green area at the top are ones that we've had a lot of consensus and over the varying meetings. And then I think once you get into the blue category, I think that some of them have been talked about and are pretty straightforward. Other ones are going to definitely need more information. The ones that are in gold in this area, the facility committee looked at those. Those are ones that I think they would like to guarantee that we spend more time on. Fire suppression was something we talked about, and Ken could talk about that down the road. But the orchestra, all those things, I think we need to get some more feedback from our architects and construction folks.
I have a question about, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have a question about the process, because I guess I even had it in my report for tonight, the committee report. So I do believe we need to see the numbers before we can solidify this. However, there are some things that we know. We know what we thought were important to us. We also know what was important to the community because we have that feedback. So we need to have that as a tool tied into this. I think we already know, we might know it without it being in writing what those were from memory, but I would like to see them side by side. I'm just trying to get the process. So we'll have that list end of this week. Is that the idea? Or, I'm sorry.
I think the estimates is the big thing that
That's
they're
what we
working
need.
at. The estimates is a big portion of it, and then the other part of it is, like, there are varying options.
Right.
And we'll talk about music for a perfect example.
Right.
There's different solutions to some of the challenges, so we're waiting for them to give some solutions. Other ones, like a Horning gymnasium, there's consensus. They are going to price out a gymnasium at Horning, and they're going to say, this is what it's going to cost you. It's going to be a gymnasium, so.
I guess, what is the value in us coming up with what we want to support right now without having the rest of the information? Or is this just general?
This is time blocked off for the board to talk to one another. If you want to wait until you have all the information, then do that.
The only reason I think it's going to change, it always changes everything. The money, let's just face it, everything we want to do. I agree 100% with what you said. Necessities going into this, whether we're doing it with our funds that we already have in storage, or if we do it with this bond, I think it's going to get done. I agree with that. Because these are things that they got to be fixed one way or another. It's not really a wish list at all. I think from what I'm looking at in this, I think this whole blue area does fall in line pretty straight with what we saw from the community and their responses. I think we kind of created this list a little bit based on that, but I do want to see the numbers on it, and I'd like to have that next to it. What I would like to talk about for sure is we need to start putting people in positions to run this thing. It takes an army. Some of those people are out there saying they're going to help us with it. We're going to come for you. But it takes a steering chair, for one thing. I wanted to ask every member of the board here, if you have someone in this community, I've got one locked in that I want to be the steering chair. But maybe you've all got ideas too, or just people that we want to be part of this process. We're going to take from, a lot of what we're working on, we should be looking for people. PTO are amazing on these kinds of things. I think they're going to be our biggest tool in the chest. When I ran that bond many years back, they ran it. I just provided them with everything they needed and kept getting them information as they needed it. And I have to take a different role now because I'm on the board during this one. I still want to be the person that helps get them all the information and everything they need, but I can't be orchestrating it like I did before, perhaps. Although I'm going to be trying every day. But we need to form that team. We need to get people interested in it now. Your meetings that you have with the PTO, I'd love to come to them. Maybe we should have a couple other board members come. We need to discuss with them who wants to run it. You probably all have an idea of who that might be in your mind, because I know we all kind of know them. But we need to get them going right now. They need to be talking to people. We need to start getting them set up with materials. We have to start getting information out as soon as possible, because we have a large number of people that vote online now. And you won't even see those people. They'll already have voted by the time we get the last sentence we want to say out there. We have experienced that over the last couple elections. But we really need to think, what is the organization that's going to run this is? It's called a steering chair. Regardless of what it's called, it's the person that organizes the people behind the voice of the bond. I imagine we're going to need donations. I imagine we're going to need to spend money on it. We already kind of have an idea of what that could run. We already know what the application will cost us. We've seen those numbers in our emails. But all of this needs to come together quickly. I agree 100%. But more importantly, we need to have a team ready to go the minute we get the information, we say we're doing this. And then they can start getting the word out. I think we'll be in a better position to say, definitely this, definitely this, definitely this. Maybe we have that special meeting the minute we get that information, if everyone else would agree to that at that time, whenever it's convenient. We've got a drop dead date of,
So you can do what you get. August 11th is when the board will have to vote to go. If you're going to go out for an election and call for an election, you're going to do it on August 11th.
Yep.
You should be voting on a completed application.
Absolutely.
Which means as you walk out of August 4th, your decisions have to be made so that the architects and construction folks can put together that package that you're going to vote on August 11th. So coming out of August 4th, this list and the scope and dollars that you're directing have to be there.
I would like, let me ask, so it's a very short timeline when you think of the monster that we're talking about. The minute we get that information, let's at least get it to the meeting, the committees. We can do those on a short notice and have special meetings on those. And let's get at least one special meeting of the board in there once we've got all our information together, because we're gonna have to pull the trigger and go.
If the materials do the end of July, we're meeting on August 4th,
Right.
we're talking 3 days.
We'll get you all the information so you can review it on your own.
It's not like we're the pendulum swinging materially.
I think August 4th is fine. If you're ready, there's about 51 projects on here, and that'll just take doing homework so that we can be efficient on August 4th. But that's perfectly fine. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about at all tonight or
I just
anything?
have a question. So I know that we have this list, which is generated mostly from board and then community surveys, et cetera.
Yep.
But that line-by-line list, when they did the walkthrough, included other things that aren't on here, that I have personally no idea of the cost of some of them, and they may be things that I'm fully supportive of, like changing all the locks on the doors, right? But I don't know what that's going to cost the district. So I guess my point is just that I think this is, a starting point, and I agree with the things on the top, but there potentially may be other things that rise to a higher priority
Oh, for sure.
in the list.
Yes.
I think once we get their
Great.
concept back and we can like merge the two, I guess that's all I'm asking.
Agreed. No, I think it's gonna have to be fluid, constantly changing, and updating us, even if it's just by email, so we can keep track of it.
Right.
perspective that I wanted to ask. Roger, to your question, I agree with all of the projects that are in green. I would support all of those at this time. But when I look at them, a lot of them are necessities, right? The BHS chiller, that is $2 million in cost. So when we think about the bottom line to our district and some of the projects that we have, that, like, let's say the turf, we just voted to put $2.6 million of turf in. What is the backup plan if some of these things don't go through? How do we, as a district, save for them and plan for them?
What I brought up 2 meetings ago,
What's that? Yeah.
very subject, that's the report as well taken.
I want to understand that a little bit better so that I know the contingency, but also when we add things to the district, like more turf fields or, bigger buildings, et cetera, how does that affect our bottom line? How are we saving for it? How does it affect our budget, et cetera? I don't know if you're, or if Scott would have a better insight into it.
To piggyback off of her question, I'd asked for a model showing
Yes.
with our current capital fund that we have, how those funds would be allocated to existing needs, real needs. I don't know whatever happened to that.
We haven't put anything together yet because we thought it would be better to have this discussion first. It's a fluid process. Everything is moving. So right now, the focus was on the walkthroughs and getting Clark and King Scott to get us pricing. Because if we start doing the other step first, we are in the dark on our pricing. So I think all of that, what you have talked about, needs to be done as soon as we get all those numbers in.
But I mean, these numbers are not like new numbers, Dave. These are numbers we've beaten to death as a team for, as Roger
Correct.
said, for multiple years. So it's not like someone threw a dart at a wall. These numbers here are pretty firm for the intent of what we're trying to achieve.
Correct, but there's some numbers on there we don't even have numbers for yet. So the ones, yes, there are ones we have solid numbers for, but there are also numbers that we don't have anything for.
Yeah, but if I interpreted Katie's question correctly, and I may not have, I heard her say that she views these as necessities, which I do as well. Right? These are things that we as a district must do. Whether the bond passes or not, we're gonna need to replace the chiller.
Right.
So if these numbers are directionally firm to enable us to make a more informed decision, the question is, how are we thinking about these necessities relative to our existing funds versus these necessities in some combination with bond funding?
That's part one of my question. Part two is legacy costs. So over time, down the road, how do we plan for all of these additions that we're adding to the bottom line of the costs of our district?
What do you mean specifically by a legacy
So if,
cost?
like, the costs that accrue over time, right? So we're gonna be putting in, let's say if we each decide to go from a plain grass field and we go to turf, and that's gonna be, X amount, and let's say it costs $10,000 a year to maintain turf, or to maintain grass, and then we go to a turf field, and that cost aggregates to like $600,000-$700,000 a field over 10 years, you're talking about adding, $600,000 to, the district for one field. So how do we save and plan for those things over time? Do we solely rely on sinking funds, bonds? Do we plan for it in our budget over time and say, over 10 years, we need to set X amount aside? That's kind of what I want to understand on top of what Andy suggested.
Correct. So what will happen at that time is we'll look at each project because each project is going to have a different upfront cost and it's going to have a different legacy cost. So once we start moving down the road with this and know exactly what our costs are, what our priorities are, what we want to do, then it's going to be determined on whether a bond passes in November or not. And if it doesn't, then we have that discussion of what's our next step. It can be going to a sinking fund. It also can be utilizing our capital projects fund, which we have about over $9 million in our capital project fund. So it will depend on it. What we'll kind of do is go back into this process, but now we'll have different parameters. Right now, you're going through this process to determine what was going to be included in a bond and what is not. Once we get past that point, and once we know what our parameters are, whether we have a bond or not, then we go back to we'll
go to the next step, which is we'll do the same process. It's just that our parameters of our funding will change. And that will change our priorities.
If I could jump in just really quickly. So we know what the projects are. You've seen our draft where we said these are ones that we would probably recommend to put in. That's going to be a board decision on what those would be. And it depends. If you don't go out for a bond, let's say, for example, then that becomes the conversation. What are the top priorities? Which one has to be first? Is the chiller something that has to be replaced in the next year? Or does it need to be replaced in the next 5 years? Is the HVAC, so we'll need the board to prioritize what those would be if there's not another form of funding. If the bond is going to be in it, then we tackle it as part of a holistic. So we've not identified which ones go in there because that'll be part of your discussion. But obviously it's in the equation. If we do not go out for a bond or what's it to pass, we're going to have to tackle certain things immediately. I know the HVAC is something that is very it's like emerging right now. The multi-roof, it's in the queue. Within the next couple of years, we have to replace the multi-roof. So we would have to use those funds there, which mean all of your gymnasiums, all that stuff's out at that point because we would be doing those projects. So we haven't assigned them, but obviously they're on the list. And then the second part of it, on that legacy cost, I think you bring up a really good point when we think about replacement. We think about that turf that you just paid for. I think that is a really important, thinking about the BCPA as an example of planning ahead. The BCPA knew that they would have to replace, so they put away a certain amount of money every single year to replace seats. You're probably going to want to have those same models when you have something that has to be replaced. The turf, we know 10 to 12 years, you're going to have to replace it. So we're probably going to want to earmark dollars each year for that. But in the discussion, I think we also, and I know we talked about this, you're also going to need to talk about things like maintenance. You build a giant facility. What does that mean? Do we have to add more custodians? Do we need to? So those are all conversations that we can have about these varying projects. So thank you for bringing those all up.
I want to, based on, similar to what Ken said, but talking about how the list was put together, this is largely ranked just on board member feedback. But again, we also did go out to the public for feedback, and that's not on this list as far as where things ranked and not factored into this. And I just pulled up the ranking from the survey, and a lot of it is similar, but there are some stark differences. For instance, the gym AC, which is in the green here, was, survey results were, that was number 9 on the list, where turf, baseball, and softball fields was number 1, and that's in the bottom, not the red, but the yellow category there. So I think there are some things here that don't necessarily align with that, and I think we need to at least look at that and put that as I guess, a piece of information on this list so that we can really look at what the community wants. I mean, this is only organized by the numbers that we put in.
Just one caution, in that survey, those numbers are based on the number of comments that were made. For example, the gymnasium air conditioning was on the upper question, which was already on the list. So everybody voted on whether that was a high priority or not. So just be careful of that. That wasn't like an election, like how many people want to do, a gymnasium. There were 10 projects that were in an upper section where people gave feedback on music rooms and all those type of things. So we could definitely talk about that. Okay. But
And
just,
also,
it wasn't-
another caveat for that was there were no dollars attached to any of those
Right.
survey questions. So when we went it out, when it went out to the community, no one saw this is going to cost X millions of dollars, right? And I do think that impacts people's view of things when they respond also, so.
And then one other thing, just an interesting anomaly that I noticed, we've got in the green, the BHS Stadium scoreboard. But then down in the yellow, again, it's softball and baseball scoreboard. They were all done at the same time. They were all put in at the same time. And I'm curious from my fellow board members, why you rank one higher than the other? Like, what is the purpose of replacing, they're all the same age, they're all similar construction, why are we replacing one and not? Why is it more important to replace one and not the other? And so I'm curious from the board members that ranked that differently, what their thought process was.
I vote to replace them all, if you want to replace them all.
Yeah, I think,
Ideally with ones that you can see in sunshine on a Saturday afternoon.
I think you can't fault it that way, only because we all have our personal loves too, just like everyone in the community does.
And that's why I'm
So,
curious to
but
hear what
to
people's
your
thought
point,
process is.
some of it just isn't legit because of that. So, but yeah, it would be good to see them side by side and how they intermingle, and it'll just give us one more piece of the pie to decide what order we want to put them in.
Another kind of example like that is Hilton Gymnasium is in the blue, but Corning Spencer is in the green. I mean, so it's just like.
Yeah, there was.
What's the reason for that?
More
I-
votes from people in one building than the other.
I think that there's a lot here, and I struggle with just by us ranking it, and we put it into wish list category versus necessity category. I don't disagree, quite frankly, with most of the necessity, other than maybe the scoreboard. I actually think the sound system belongs there, but maybe not combined with the scoreboard. We all heard at graduation, the need for a sound system.
I think that is, I mean, it's referenced as part of that, the sound system.
That's, I'm saying I would uncouple that.
Okay.
But I'm not disagreeing with it. I do worry about how things got listed and ranked, and I think we need to.
I'm glad you brought up the sound system. The reason because I don't know what the people in the stadium heard, because a lot of times it's directionally put, so the players don't need to hear it. The people in the stands need to hear it. So those would be things that we want to check into as we're deciding this stuff, and that's what our team's going to do for us. They're going to go, no, the sound system's great, but if you're sitting in the middle of the field where you were, you're not going to understand what they're saying. Sometimes it's intentional because of sound and direction and people's homes behind them and stuff like that. So there's a lot that goes into that, but those are the things that we want our architects to figure out and give us pointers on. Again, I think the numbers are going to be huge as far as making our decisions. It comes down to like you run your house. I'd love to have a new car this year, but I need a furnace this year, so maybe next year I'll get the car. And we really got to think like that, because we've all got elected here to run this house for our constituents.
I guess that's another thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is if we were just going for fixes,
Okay.
the sinking fund was probably a better option for that.
Right.
The bond is to really do some new things
Exactly.
and make our district shine.
Exactly.
And especially after we've seen what some of our neighboring districts are doing, ours looks like peanuts, quite frankly. And I'm not suggesting we spend that many millions of taxpayer dollars, but I also don't want to get us too invested in just the fixing. If we are going to go for a bond, we do need to add some new things. We need to bring some new things to our families and, look at what are we doing to attract people to the district, what's going to elevate the program, what's going to elevate the arts, what's going to elevate softball and baseball, what's going to elevate our science centers. The STEAM Center was a great addition, right? That it elevated our district in it. It wasn't just fixing a roof and an air conditioning system. And if we get stuck on that, I'm concerned that's not sexy enough to sell this bond to our taxpayers. We do have to have some new, exciting things to sell the bond.
Well, and I would, on that note, I would sort of, going back to the discussion about what is included on the list of things that are going to be addressed by our capital improvement fund dollars. I mean, the only money we've spent in so far are fixes that needed to be done ASAP, which is, replacing the turf fields, replacing the tanks, right? I mean, those were things, those aren't, I mean, obviously the field, people use the field, but I mean, those are fixes that were significant dollars, and those were things that needed to be done. I agree with you that people need to get excited about the bond. They need to be able to say, this is gonna be really something that we will see a tangible benefit of, or for, and wanna, go out and support it, as opposed to, replacing a underground fuel tank. And so for that reason, that's why I also think, getting back to how we decide what goes on the capital improvement fund list versus the bond, that's why I think we need to wait, because, first of all, there are things that I think are itemized or considered to be included in the capital improvement fund allocation that couldn't be on the bond, like some computer equipment, some things technology pieces that wouldn't be able to be qualified for the bond, that could potentially then be paid for through the capital improvement account. If the bond fails, then at that point, we may need to pivot and say, well, maybe we aren't gonna be able to spend the money on those things, and now we need to do a chiller, or we need to. So from a timing standpoint, I think, I view the capital improvement fund items to be the cart, and the bond to be the horse, because we need to know, in my opinion, what's gonna be approved for the bond, and what's within the bond, and then if it gets approved, then that will dictate where we spend those dollars in the capital improvement fund. If the bond doesn't pass, then we'll have to reallocate to some of these priority fixes that we need to absolutely do. And so, that's my sense. Because I agree with you 100%. I think that's gonna be critically important to the success of the bond, is that people see things on there that they get excited about, they're gonna be an absolute tangible benefit, and make Brighton, again, be the shining star, but done in a manner that's manageable and reasonable, so.
The one area where I do think, and we only have one in red on our list, but I would say if there's anything that we all agree isn't gonna be done, let's not make the architects work on coming up with a price. But, I didn't see anything necessarily that, other than the one thing in red, that I would make a motion to drop down there,
I didn't understand why ceiling tiles was on the list. To me, that seemed ridiculous.
Regular maintenance.
In the spirit of time, I didn't bring it up. Well, I guess I did.
Yeah, I saw that question, and one thing I did one of the walkthroughs with the architects, and it was interesting because they literally were like, counting ceiling tiles every room we went into and things like that, so.
I can,
That's how they do their dimensions. It's easy to.
well, they do,
Yeah, they can
2, 4, 6, 8, yeah. I can tell you this, if you don't do it in a bond, it's last on the list of things to do. You get the stained ceilings, you get that kind of stuff, so it's the least sexiest thing for our maintenance people to want to do. And they get water stains. These are flat roofs, they leak. They're almost by design going to. I love to go to a gable system. They are doing that now in newer buildings. But it's kind of the opportunity to get them done, because we can never get them done otherwise. And I can show you that in I know. But the leaking pipe that needs to be fixed comes first, and the snowstorm needs to be taken care of first, and it goes on and on and on and on. And then we're sitting here 10 years later going, yep, they look worse now too. They're not getting any better. So I see it in every school district I've ever worked in, and they're so thankful when it's done, just because, hey, it's finally clean. There's not one tile. Now, that's not gonna stay like that forever, but it looks really good for a long time. The only other thing I want to say, and you guys have kind of mimicked it already and said it, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it every chance I get. Schools in general are getting smaller, and this is our opportunity to bring Brighton, as it's been said, to the top of the list when people are searching online, going, where do I want my kids to go? We want them to have the best everything as far as what we offer to kids, because I want this to be the castle on the hill when people start looking again and they go, yeah, let's go to Brighton. And if I have to drive my kid an hour to get them there, I'll do it. It was the only reason I moved to Brighton. I didn't know anything about the town. The first thing we did was search, what do Brighton schools offer? And it was really high on the list in Michigan. And that's really what mattered to us. It just was really the icing on the cake when we got here and went, look at this quaint little cool town and all the people who seem to know everybody. And that was, that was just That was the icing on the cake. We came here for the schools, we stay here for the schools. My children have, well, the ones that are probably gonna have my first grandchild, rubbing something, are in Brighton because of the same reason. And I want their house values to skyrocket because Brighton Schools is a pillar. I want their kids to have the same thing that my kids had and made them the successes that they are right now. And that's what this is about to me. It needs to elevate us for that, but it needs to take care of the final problems that we still have that persist. And, but the key to that are the people that teach the classes and the classes that we're offering. The building will support that. That's what I'm looking for. That's my opinion, and that's how I feel about this bond.
So to Alicia's point, are we going to move all of these forward, or are there things that people want to drop off and not have Clark and King Scott?
Oh, I don't think their job is to decide whether or not we keep it. Theirs is to tell us
No,
what it
to
would
give us
cost.
estimates and work on the architectural designs and all that stuff.
Right.
I think that's what we need to.
My thought is, if there is something that we just say as a board, no,
Right,
then we're not wasting their time.
Right.
agreed.
But, I mean, the red sand volleyball court here, I mean, I could also argue that the Maltby-Horning parking lot, like, there's already been
How many
studies.
times are we gonna study it? We have spent a lot of money
Yeah,
studying
so
that.
why are we having them do something? I don't know that I have anything else on that list necessarily that I'm proposing to pull off of it, but I didn't know if others,
As someone with a sixth grader next year, I would love it if they could provide a solution, though. If they are, you know, maybe out-of-the-box thinkers, I'm not saying do another study, but that is a nightmare, and the longer, more time goes on, that parking lot gets more aggressive and concerning, so.
One thing that needs, and I don't intend to start a 30-minute conversation about this, but I've shared with videos with all of you, and I spent a lot of time there with my kids, is the backside of Scranton, the driveway. What's the proper way to describe the drive on the backside of Scranton? The access bus.
Yeah.
road. Yeah, I remember one of our early conversations, there was some discussion around limitations that we had relative to the type of road that was ultimately we could put in, where it's gated on both sides. But there's major problems with people driving their vehicles up there. And, you know, I've said it in other board meetings, we'll say it again, like some child is gonna get run over and killed on that road. Parents back up, pull out, there's elderly people driving their vehicles up there because there's handicap parking spaces out by the field there, which we want. But it seems if we were to move forward with a bond, which I believe we will, that would be something of substance that I think every family that is involved in an athletic program that uses those fields, including all the grandparents and parents, is affected by, like finding a way to engineer more parking or egress into and out of that area that's safe, a walking path for pedestrians, something, because it's very dangerous, very dangerous. There's people who idle their car, there's 6 kids on the middle of the road, and will idle their car all the way down the road, and if someone hits the wrong pedal, roll over a bunch of little kids. It's terrifying.
there is a walking path there from, because I live right by there.
Well, and there is to the other,
Yeah.
like, I park in that far parking lot,
Yeah.
take the walking path up, that isn't the issue, it's
the people
it's
that are
right by
walking on the road.
garbage dumpsters.
Oh, going right in from that.
Right straight down from the garbage dumpsters, yep.
I mean, I walk through there all the time, and my husband and I always say, like, why couldn't we have put a small parking lot
Yeah.
over
Oh,
on the other side?
There's plenty of
So,
space.
it seems that there would be for a civil engineer, like a way to solve the problem, you know.
No, we didn't, those discussions were had before, and honestly, those woods that are back there, we own those, that's our property. That'd be a perfect spot for a parking area. We don't have to take them all down, but we could definitely clear some of that out and make a nice parking lot back there.
And let people walk right up to the.
Let them walk to the fields. Yeah, you're always gonna have those people, everywhere I've worked, that have to park right next to the field, and you're not gonna tell them otherwise, but then we can call someone else to deal with
I
that.
had an interesting thing happen one day early in the sports cycle. I thought, well, I'm gonna be proactive, go take those orange barrels, Scott had them, put the orange barrels out in front of the road. I was there early, went back to my car, sat in my car. The next person that pulled up, parked the car, got out of the car, used orange barrels
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the problem.
that is the problem.
It was just like, oh.
You can't fix some things.
So are we adding
But
things
no,
now?
definitely worth talking about. We've got ways to regulate it.
Are we adding things now?
Yeah, I know.
Because I do have one
That's what we
more.
need to do.
But whoever brought up, I think it was, you know,
Yeah,
she brought
I
up
know, I'm
studies, so
teasing.
that was something we mentioned, doing studies, engineering studies, like,
And
Why don't we wait, or why doesn't the board wait until you get your information from Clark and King, Scott, and then we'll come back and revisit this?
Yeah, I mean, but I will add to the suggestion that was made, I can't remember if it was Mr. Bain or Ms. Tierney, on potentially excluding, I don't know what work King, Scott, or Clark is doing with regard to the Maltby Horning parking lot. I mean, Clark obviously was involved in the discussions when that was investigated 3 years ago, so they certainly are aware of what was looked at then, the traffic engineering analysis that was done, and, I mean, you know, all potential options were explored, which ultimately, you know, led to a dead end from the standpoint that we wouldn't be able to get the cooperation from the road commission to do the type of improvements, you know, in terms of bringing in another road to the west of the practice facility onto Scranton, or onto Brighton Road. And it just, you know, looking at internal circulation, they had a traffic engineer analyze it thoroughly, and there wasn't a viable option. So I don't know.
They are looking at something that was not brought up before. I don't know if it's going to work, but no egress onto Brighton Road, but I think they're looking at the possibility of connecting the upper and lower lot, which could give another entrance out onto Bower Road. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that they were exploring they're looking at something. So I think it might be worthwhile at least hearing from them. They might have some different ideas. I don't know that the ideal would have been to have another access to get onto Brighton Road. That's what we were looking for. That was the big tamale in the last one. But they might have something that is a little bit better.
Is there
So-
septic available right there, anywhere?
Their septic, like
If we-
directly out.
I'm not talking about it, is there a way for us to get into the city sewer?
Oh, you mean access?
Yeah, because that eliminates a big piece of the back lot that we can't do anything with.
Yeah.
And that was my thoughts on it. If we can pipe, it might be worth paying the money to get into the city sewer, so we can alleviate that problem and use that property for what we want. Because you could put whatever works, you could put the kids' playscapes there then, or a parking lot, or a drop-off. It takes up a big chunk of the land, and if we can get off it for a price, we all know it has a price, it might be worth it. So, that was my thought.
It'll probably be a strikeout, but I
Yeah,
give them 2
it's
weeks to
possible.
see what they come back with.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree, we beat it to death. There's
All right.
no doubt about it.
So I guess the consensus is we're just gonna wait for the information. I mean, I do think it would be helpful if we were, so obviously August 4th is a Monday. If we were to get the information the previous Monday, which is what, 25th of, if we got something like that Monday or Tuesday, and we could have potential committee meetings later in the week to give, you know, the committees an opportunity to, you know, do a deep dive and have conversation, that would help make our August 4th meeting much more efficient and informative.
And I guess, can I just make another request, like just off of Ms. Tierney's and Mr. Storm's point, is anything that is not a one-time cost, if there's even a rough estimate of what that would mean for us moving forward, you know, monetarily, a lot of these things will be primarily one-time costs, but some will not. I think that would be really helpful when we have the discussion, so we don't go back and ask for that information because we're on such a tight timeline. So just an estimate would be great.
All right. That concludes the bond application discussion. Moves us to item B, student handbook. Mr. Anastasov?
Yes, so we, the policy committee went over these nearly about a month ago for this. So we're bringing, for the first time, for the board to take a look at them. There are, most of the recommendations are in BHS and Scranton, but we also have a few recommendations in elementary and Bridge and Maltby as well. And they're all laid out for you as far as what the committee recommended to move forward to the board.
I just have a question for clarification. So I'm looking, first of all, I guess I'll look at the elementary one because we have the student code of conduct. And I noticed that that was changed in all of them. That was read for all of them. What part of that actually changed?
And so, yes, you're referring to the one that is in all four
Yeah,
objects, and when it
yes.
refers to the 7 factors and
Correct.
those. So the couple items that changed there was, first off, it was just to align the language, because each of the language had slightly
So they're
different.
all the
So
same.
this is intended to be an intro. So we made sure to put the beginning part, and this was also recommended by our legal team. And so we added the part that's meant to be a guidance subject to discretion of the administration and the board. That's for multiple items, recurring items. And then that's where also Trune recommended that we put in the legal compliance that we have to do and refer to the 7 factors anytime there's a disciplinary action that takes place. So it shows kind of the action we take, but also the rights of the student
So-
as well.
So we have been using those, but it just wasn't in the handbook.
Correct,
is that-
yeah. 7 factors are required by law to use. And so we've been applying these, but this is more of to streamline and make it a more consistent message across all buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. That concludes the student handbook, moves us to policy package. Mr. Anastasov, you again.
Back here, so, very similar things. Some of these items, to be honest, we've been probably working on for a few months now of, some, tweaks to them. But we got to the point on most of these where we're ready to move, to the board as you, see them today. Most of them are, fairly small changes, and there is still some, Trune recommendations that are filtering from, last year, some things that were put on hold for various reasons. And then there's other ones that are new legal requirements, such as the Earned Sick Time Act or the ESTA, as you can see as well. So they're presented to you for at least the first reading before we head into action a month from today.
Okay, any questions? All right, then that concludes the for future action portion of our agenda, moves us into the board committee chair reports, community recognition.
I will take it first,
Okay.
because most of mine was already talked about. The facility committee of July 14th, we talked about the bond project discussion. We did talk about needing a chair for the steering chair position. And I kind of discussed that already tonight. I went through estimates that'll be bringing before us so that we can start making suggestions for our top picks. Summer project updates. Scranton wall leak repair, it's in that one quarter, is in progress and targeted to be completed by August 1st. The Beck, if you hadn't noticed, the Beck carpet is complete, painting is in progress, bathrooms are progressing with a completion date of August 1st. The fuel tanks at the bus garage, fuel tanks were removed, they did find some contamination, they removed the soil, got it tested, and it is now contaminant-free. After removing, what did he say, I think it was 8 train loads of dirt. And also, just to let you know that this week, the concrete will be completed, and then the tanks will be installed. And they will be using the capital funding to the tune of $658,000 that will come out of the capital funding to fund that. So that is something that money is being used for right now. And that was really the extent of my report. I also wanted to say Hawkins Playground was to be started this week. So that was something that was moving forward also. Pardon? Yes.
First, yeah.
Yes, I think I squeaked right past that one. But you are correct. They were both getting started. And we're not really running those, so 100%, so we're not going to put that on us. It doesn't have to be ready for school, but it probably will for the opening of school.
Okay.
Any questions on the committees? Okay, thank you.
The academic committee met today. We talked about the moving of the senior center to the Beck building, that's going to happen, that they're closing at Miller on August 1st, and then I think they're closing, he said, for 1 to 2 weeks, and they're going to be at the Beck building, so that's kind of exciting, and that will give us then the rooms at Miller for preschool. Talking about the science curriculum, looking at the rooms, how the room modifications are going to impact curriculum, how we can be sure that we have consistency across the classes depending on who's teaching. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. We talked about performing arts, what can be done to support that in terms of what's the priorities and what needs to be done, what needs to be done with the BCPA, and I guess that was it. And we are not canceling the meeting for August, so our next meeting is in September.
I was just going to give an update on the state budget. They did not meet the July 1 deadline that they had kind of self-imposed on themselves. They were supposed to be back in session tomorrow. They have canceled session for tomorrow. It's looking like the end of July before they'll be back really in negotiations. The House version of the budget is definitely much more acceptable for Brighton schools than the Senate version. They're trying to meld the two at the moment, but if I had to guess, I would not plan on a budget being done until just before school starts would be my best guess. It's possible they end up into late September, and it's also possible they get into a government shutdown. I think it would at least be a little bit of an academic exercise for you guys to think about what does it look like in a government shutdown, how long can we function. The big schools do not have to by law shut down, but when they start missing state aid payments, it becomes the problem. So what does that look like and how long can we operate and at least be prepared if that happens?
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody? Okay. So, all right, then that concludes the board committee chair reports, community recognition, and moves us into, well, we will have, like it has been discussed, we will have a special meeting on Monday, August 4th at 7 p.m. For purposes of really exclusively discussing the bond. That'll be our next meeting. And at this point, Mr. Stahl?
I'd like to make a motion to enter a closed session for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategies connected with BEA, BESPA, and BASHA bargaining units, and as much as the administration has requested a closed session.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Stahl. Do we have support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Tierney. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Storm?
Yes.
Mrs. Urbane? Yes. Mr. Myers?
Yes, that motion passes 7-0. We will now move into closed session. We have completed all business items on our agenda, so we will not return to open session at the conclusion of the closed